Good morning, America. This is probably a familiar voice to many of you. My name is Rod Eccles. This is a brand new program called The Liberty Cafe. So this is the very first show of it, so please forgive us if we have a few bugs that we're ironing out today. But this program is all about speaking to other great Americans. So I want you to sit back, grab your coffee, and take a listen for the next 60 minutes or so. Every week we will be discussing things that are truly American here on the Liberty Cafe. All about liberty, all about America, American history, American future. And we will delve into subjects from movers and shakers from all across the fruited plains. This is not something that is a political talk so much as it is an American talk. And this morning, I have as my very first guest a gentleman who I have worked with in the past. And he has got a lot going on in his world. He is also a speaker, talk show host, the whole American gambit, if you will. He's a great American, Rick Robinson. Good morning, Rick. Glad you could join us this morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor to be here on the very first show for this particular venture of yours.
I am so glad that you were able to make it. I know that you have a busy schedule, and one of the things that I know that you're very interested in, as I am, is the politics of today. And we have a number of different things going on in politics, both on national and local levels, wherever people might happen to be. Now, one of the things I know is that your neck of the woods is not the same as my neck of the woods. So if you could fill us up today a little bit about some of the important things that are going on in your area.
Oh, most certainly. I am from what has now been dubbed and surpassed Texas as the most conservative state in the country, which is Oklahoma. This last presidential election, Obama did not carry a single county. All 77 of our counties went completely red. Sadly, we don't have much population to speak of for our landmass, so it didn't help much, but it was nice that not a single county carried him. Not that I would probably dislike the president if I ever actually got to know him personally, but I strongly disagree with almost every single one of his policies. So it's nice to live somewhere where I have like-minded people around me most of the time. Things that are going on in my neck of the woods, we typically try to fight the administration tooth and nail every step of the way. We've recently struck down Common Core. We have decided not to go with the Obamacare exchanges. So pretty much anything that he's trying to implement, we're trying to find ways to fight, which is also refreshing, unlike the folks in D.C. Just saying.
Yeah, it's as you look across the country, you can see a number of different states who have, with Obamacare, they fought Obamacare. They didn't set up the exchanges, and now some of them are actually suing the administration and the federal government for actually setting up its own exchange, simply because the actual letter of the law states that the states must do it, and it gives no room for the federal government to do it. But as typical with this current administration, even on a law that they write, it doesn't seem to matter that they think that they need to follow that law. I find it kind of interesting that we've come down this road where states are now trying to usurp I wouldn't say usurp, but stand up for their own rights again. And we didn't used to have that type of feeling. I mean, are you noticing in your areas, because I guess you're part of flyover country, as Washington likes to call it. Are you noticing a lot of Americans feeling that either they're being left out, or they feel that now is the time to actually stand up and make their voices heard?
Okay, sorry about that. For some reason, I was having an issue with my mic. Actually, I've noticed a little bit less of folks feeling like they're being left out, more than basically it's not so much being left out. I think a lot of folks that I talk to on a daily basis feel like they're being ignored. Actually, that was one of the common themes that we ran across, because I was recently at the Southern Republican Leadership Conference for 2015 that actually happened in my home city, which was Oklahoma City. That was one of the recurring themes over and over again, was it felt nice for once, even though we are in flyover country, to be getting this type of attention, because up until now, we've kind of completely felt ignored. And a lot of folks are feeling that way too, because they feel like no matter how loudly they try to voice their opposition, nothing changes. I mean, we just gave the Republicans in Congress what can only be deemed as a mandate. And even folks on CNN and MSNBC eventually begrudgingly admitted that it was a mandate. And yet nothing has really changed, because the only thing that's different is now we have Republicans trying to do the same thing that a lot of the Democrats were trying to do before. This is the problem. We've gotten to the point to where it doesn't matter whether you're supporting somebody with a D behind their name or you're supporting somebody with an R behind their name. It's basically a brand war. It's kind of like when you buy a soda. Whether you're drinking Coke or Pepsi, you're still getting a soda.
Yeah, so they're not. So people are really kind of, well, we can see that through the polls. If you happen to be a believer in polls, I'm not a huge fan or believer in polls, but you can notice trends in polls if you pay attention close enough. And some of the trends are that there's a growing number of people who once supported Obamacare who no longer support it. And we've also just recently heard in the news that a lot of insurance companies are now asking for huge increases. And when you look at the stories as to why they're asking for the increases, we were told that, people would have the ability to go to the doctor, those people who didn't have insurance before, that they wouldn't be going to the emergency room, and that they wouldn't be bugging doctors as much because they'd be a little bit more comfortable knowing that if something really important happened, they'd be covered. But what we found out is that the people, especially those who enrolled on the exchanges, are now utilizing the healthcare system more than they did before. And the costs have gone up to administer that. And I think, just about every conservative and rhino back in the day before this was passed into law was saying that this was going to be the end game. This was going to happen. And we were told, no, everything is going to go down. Prices are going to go down. Everything's going to be more affordable. And what we have found, as usual, is the exact opposite. It's more costly for premiums. It's more costly for doctors and hospitals. It's more costly for out-of-pocket cost deductibles. I mean, I don't know how many people that I've heard their deductibles have doubled from what they used to have. I mean, and now we have this, and I haven't been able to have the time to actually fully read through the whole thing, but now we have the Republicans in the House saying, well, they have a viable alternative to Obamacare. Do you think we really need a government alternative to Obamacare, or should we just scrap the whole thing and forget it?
I say we scrap the whole thing and forget it for very important reasons. Does anybody remember when he promised each family would save around $2,500 a month? Now, at this point, most families are spending at least that much, if not more, for their health care. But I honestly think the thing that nobody was paying attention to, and I actually have the clip in my studio, but I'm not in there right now, is there is a clip that was recorded back during the 2012 run-up, which was the same type of clip that Romney eventually got in trouble for, where in public Obama was saying that he didn't support a single-payer health care system, but behind closed doors he was telling everyone that he does support single-payer health care. And I submit to you that most of the problems that we're having with the health care system right now are not accidental. They're by design. He's wanting to collapse the insurance industry, and so are the people that were funding him, because if they can create a big enough catastrophe, the government is going to have to step in and clean up the mess, and then we will eventually wind up with some form of single-payer healthcare system, which he admits behind closed doors that he supports. So I honestly think we were duped hook, line, and sinker. Too many folks bought into it, and now we're stuck. Still, I think the only viable alternative right now is to scrap everything, because the one thing that I'm slowly starting to learn over time is the folks that are actually in power in D.C. that consider themselves Republicans, they want the same thing the Democrats want. They just want to get us there slower so nobody notices.
Yeah, it's the old notion, well, we kind of like the idea, we just want to be the ones in charge of it instead of the Democrats. Now, I know Barney Frank was very open before he left Congress and retired, thank God, that he wanted that their goal was eventually to get to a single-payer system. And he even admitted that if they came out and said it, that we need a single-payer system now, that the American people would not accept it. So the only way to get to it was to kind of slowly cram it down our throats and do it this way, which is Obamacare, and eventually get to the single-payer system. Now, he's on record saying exactly that. And the interesting thing about it is a lot of people said, well, no, we're not going to be in a single-payer system type of country. We're not going to go down that road. But just last week, the New York State Senate voted to pass a single-payer system in the state of New York. Now, it still has to go through the Assembly, and it still has to be signed by the governor if it gets past the Assembly. But the point is that the New York State Senate just voted to go to a single-payer system within that state. So what do liberals who say, or anybody who say that this is not the goal of the government, what do they have to say to this now? What do you think?
I think if they still think, after everything we've seen that's gone wrong with Obamacare, that this was not the goal of the government, was to at some point institute a federal single-payer system, then they're either deluding themselves or they're just not paying attention. Now, as far as the state of New York doing what they just did, I fully support a state's rights to basically use their 10th Amendment to institute whatever program, or 10th Amendment rights to institute whatever programs they want. It'll be interesting to see if the state's around much longer, because they already can't afford most of the programs that they have. But it's an interesting experiment nonetheless, so it'll be interesting if it does pass to see what happens and how quickly everybody leaves.
You know, you just said something that is quite important. I think a lot of people often miss that. You are a very big states' rights advocate. And frankly, so am I, because I believe that the Constitution definitely does delineate certain powers to the federal government, and those that it does not leaves those powers to the people and to their state. So if a state wants to do something socialistic like that, or even verging, trying to co-opt a little bit on the communist side, they're perfectly capable and within their rights to do that, because you don't have to live in that state. Unfortunately, you can't, when your entire federal government decides to do something, what are you going to do? Leave the country? And there is a growing number of people who are, after all, renouncing their American citizenship. Now, do you think that this renunciation of, because last year there was a record number of Americans renouncing their citizenship, turning in their American passports, and most of them already had been residing overseas for years, and I guess they just got tired of paying American taxes. Can't blame them on that. But do you think that this is related at all to this administration, and these Americans are just tired of being related to this administration?
I think it's one of the only forms of protest they really have left. So I think a lot of it does have to do with the administration, the blatant attack on taxpayers, the blatant attack on small businesses, even the blatant attack on larger businesses. The issue is the larger businesses can survive whatever the administration throws at them, because they can simply pass the cost on to consumers. Small businesses can't. I myself used to be a business owner. I am again, now that I'm starting this, but I used to run a security agency here within the state of Oklahoma, and I operated it for nearly 13 years. The economy took a really sharp turn shortly after this administration took office, and before I knew it, I was no longer able to support myself without making sure that I took money from the folks that were working for me, so I began having to downsize because I didn't have a choice. And eventually that company went away, and now here we are a few short years later, and I'm doing what I'm doing now. But, I think a lot of folks are doing it specifically for the reason that you mentioned. They don't want any affiliations with an administration that is this openly, this transparently corrupt, because that's the only promise he's kept. He promised that he was going to be one of the most open and transparent administrations ever. We just missed the part where it was going to be openly and transparently corrupt.
And speaking of corruption, we have the Billary campaign, which is now kind of interesting. That I guess she announced a month and a half ago that officially that she was running for she was a candidate for the presidency of the United States, and I guess she still hasn't had her official campaigning send-off rally that they're still going to have later this month. Now, a lot of people are talking about how she doesn't really want the nomination now. And that she's going through the motions because she has to, because she owes too many favors to too many people. So she has to make it look like that she's actually interested in running. But if that's it doesn't look like, if those people are correct in saying that she doesn't really want it now because of all the scandal, she doesn't really seem to be pretending very well that she wants it. Or do you think this is just the way she is, that she expects to have the nomination?
Well, I think for the folks that are saying that now because of all the scandals she doesn't really want it, again, they're not paying attention. She may realize that she's not going to be able to get it, but it doesn't have anything to do with her not wanting it. I think her behavior is a lot more akin to someone who really, really wants something and knows they're probably not going to get it, so now they're pouting. Because it reminds me of when my children tried to do things when they were younger and they got caught, and then because of that they weren't going to get to take a trip or something because they got grounded. It's the same general behavior. They're just like, she's over there, she's not engaging the press, she's not even talking about it anymore, and it's because she knows there's way too many things that are mounting on her. So I think she's hoping if she sits around quietly enough, since unfortunately the majority of the American population really doesn't pay attention to very many things political, but by the time the election rolls around, most of this will be old news again, and she can come out from hiding and run her campaign and see if she still has a shot. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that one of my biggest fears, and this is tongue-in-cheek for a moment, but one of my biggest fears is, do we really want the first gentleman, who would be Bill Clinton, alone with the wives of heads of state? That doesn't seem like a good plan to me.
No, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one and say that is a little bit of a nightmare, having Bill Clinton back in the White House, being free. He would be setting the tone of what, the first gentleman would be doing, because inevitably we would have another female executive in the White House at some point in time. What does a guy do? There's our system is not set up to have a male first partner, if you will, with the female being the head of state. I guess we're going to have to take cues from some of the governors around the country, where on both sides of the political aisle, where governors are females and their husbands are well, in my state, for instance, we have we had back-to-back female governors, and I could not tell you even what either one of their husbands look like. I mean, that's how out of the picture that they are. Now, if you're talking about male governors, everybody knows what the first lady of the state looked like, but I could not tell you what the first gentleman, either the previous one or the current one, looks like. I barely even know their names. That's how much out of the picture they are. Is that what should be expected of the first gentleman in the White House? Because that isn't going to be Bill Clinton.
Well, I think honestly, again, and this isn't to sound all patriarchal for a moment, but the system was originally designed. That's why there's the title of the First Lady. Even in states, that's what the wife of the governor was called. And I mean, my state even has a female governor at this point. And actually, I got a chance to meet her at the Republican convention. She's not entirely popular in my state any longer, because there's been too many things she's come out where she's kind of sounded like she was for Common Core. But I do have to admit, after getting to spend a few minutes with her off the record, she's a very nice person. I honestly don't even know if she is married. I hadn't bothered to look, and there's been no press about anything to do with her husband. So I think that is kind of the mindset, is, female governors, husbands kind of just completely stay out of the picture, because I don't think anybody knows what to do with them, and it's not like you want to see a picture of the first gentleman planting a garden in the White House.
Well, this is nothing unusual, because even with Sarah Palin, as she called her husband Todd the first hunk, we really, even during the campaign, we did not see much of him. So, that may be, I don't know, maybe that would be for the best if he sort of like was invisible almost, but that wouldn't be Bill Clinton, do you think?
Oh, no. Bill Clinton will probably be stealing the spotlight from Hillary in every chance that he can. I'm sure there'll be scandals breaking about the parties that are going on in the White House when she's off at state functions, and not to mention the trouble he'll get into when he attends said state functions, because you know how that usually works, which is why I mentioned what I mentioned earlier. The heads of state are in one room, the spouses are in another, they hang out, they talk. I don't think with Bill there would be much talking involved. Not if he can get away with it anyway.
Yeah, he'll pretty much really take over the limelight, and people will be asking. And it may happen. And God forbid if Hillary's actually elected, but it may happen where people are asking the president what her husband thinks, because they did ask her what her husband thought when she was Secretary of State, and she got rather indignant about it. And you know what? I have to give her props. I would be a little upset as well. I mean, go ahead and ask my husband what he thinks, but he's not the Secretary of State. I am. So I can understand that. But in most cases, people do not do that to the person who is in the elected or appointed office. They don't ask about their previously powerful spouse in either sex. It doesn't matter which, if they're male or female. Speaking of sex and changing of sexes, now this whole notion of, just changing gears a little bit, of Bruce Caitlyn Jenner. Now, I am sure you've been inundated by, on your social media feeds and your news feeds and everywhere else about this whole thing. And I have been, by a few people, I've been taken to task by saying that Bruce Caitlyn is not a hero, and he's not very brave as far as the definition of the word brave goes, for doing this out in the open. In fact, I've taken it a step further by saying that men have been doing this transgender thing for decades now, and many of them do it in cities which are not in countries that are not very accepting of them, and they risk life and limb every time they step outside their own door, dressed as they are dressed. And some of them do get beat up pretty badly, and some of them even get killed simply because they are the quote-unquote tranny. I would say that they're a little bit more brave knowing that they might not come home that night versus Bruce, who nobody would pay attention to if he wasn't married to a Kardashian. I mean, are you getting this type of nonsense as well?
Yes, and honestly, I've been taken to task several times because I rarely call Jenner Caitlyn. Actually, most of the time when I refer to him, I now refer to, her as the Jenner formerly known as Bruce. My issue with all of this is, look, I don't care if he or she feels like she should have been born a woman. It really doesn't affect me. The thing that really upset me was when the story broke the other day that ESPN is honoring now Caitlyn with the Courage Award for doing what she has done. The thing that irritated me about that isn't the fact that they chose to honor her, but I'll get back to that in a second. It's the fact that there were two other people that were up for that award that actually have displayed genuine courage repeatedly. There was a 19-year-old young lady who was diagnosed with a terminal illness who continued to compete in her sport to the detriment of her health, and knowing that eventually it would cause her to pass much more quickly, she did it anyway. And now she has passed. And now there is another gentleman who did time in the military as a double amputee and with prosthetics is running marathons. Those two people were passed over for this award to honor the Jenner formerly known as Bruce. My issue with this isn't that he or she decides that now she wants to be a woman and feels that she should have been born that way. Okay, fine. Do what you got to do. Stop taking up the spotlight. There's more important things to focus on. But the fact that ESPN went for a complete and total ratings grab and passed over one of two people that honestly, legitimately deserves that award really ticks me off. And that's what I have to say about that, because I don't care. Bruce, Caitlyn, whatever he or she wants to call herself now and whatever she wants to leave wear when she leaves the house does not affect me one iota. But when we have folks that legitimately displayed courage and they're passed over because ESPN's trying for a ratings grab, that upsets me.
Excuse me. I know that a lot of people think that this whole notion that coming out of the closet and as far as being a tranny is concerned is a brave notion, and that we need to respect these people and call, if they're a man transitioning to a woman, we need to call them a girl, and if they're a female transitioning to a man, that we need to call her a boy. And my whole argument with this is has their DNA changed? Has their inside internal organ system changed? It hasn't, so they're still what they were born with. Now, have you read or heard about the professor? And I'm sorry, I don't have it up on my screens right now, but it just reminded me of this. There's a professor from Johns Hopkins University, and he's a very well read and learned and respected psychologist with over 125 peer-reviewed articles on psychiatry and psychology. Now, this guy is saying that although homosexuality itself is not necessarily a mental illness, but transgenderism, as he calls it, is. And he points to the fact of studies, numerous studies, that point out that the suicide rate for those after they have transformed to their new sex, quote unquote, the suicide rate for those people is much about 4 times higher than the subjects, the test subjects before their sex change. So my whole issue is that I that's why I say Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, is that he's still a he. He can change his outside and put on makeup and they can do photoshopping, but he's still a man. He's still a man. And I think that we're confusing our younger people and our younger set who's all about celebrity today. And let's face it, the millennials are all about celebrity. And I think that's kind of confusing a lot of the kids today about who they think that they are and who they think that they should be. And one of the things I have to ask you is, have you heard about the news about Brad Pitt?
Have I heard the news about Brad Pitt? No,
Yeah,
I must say, honestly.
a couple of, again, just those things that just drop into my news feed every once in a while, because I am not about celebrity and I do not follow celebrities. But about 2 weeks ago, there was a news story or a news feature or whatever it was that said Brad Pitt was, they were accusing Brad Pitt of being a bisexual, and that Angelina Jolie did not look upon that as it being cheating, and that she welcomed it. Have we gone too far in worshiping celebrities, and that everybody has to be a celebrity, including now our politicians?
Oh, I think we've had an issue with celebrity worship for a very, very long time, and I think it's only gotten worse. I personally, I'm not sitting in judgment of those two, but if those statements were true, then they both have problems, because if you are spending time physically with someone else outside of your marriage, that is cheating, whether you're doing it with someone of the same sex or a different sex. And if that's not a problem for you, then that's entirely up to you. But the fact that you wish to broadcast that nationally and worldwide disturbs me just a little bit more, because how much more attention do these people need? Because I honestly, back to Bruce, Caitlyn, whatever, I think a lot of this has to do with attention. Think about it for a second. He hasn't done anything sports related in a very long time. He's only sideline affiliated with the Kardashians at this point. And I've heard rumors that there may be a book deal coming soon. So I wonder how much of this was a grab for attention, because I've also heard rumors that while he may look a lot like a woman, depending on how he dresses, he still has all of his male parts. So if you were really committed to becoming a woman, seems like there's some work to still be done there.
Quite a bit of work. You know what? When we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to change gears a little bit more. We're going to find out a little bit more about Rick and what makes Rick tick out there in the middle of America. We'll be right back, folks.
time. George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. Call InventHelp today.
To get your free inventor's information, call 1-800-352-1609. That's 1-800-352-1609.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 52security.com. That's the number 52security.com. 52security.com. Go to 52security.com.
Hurt or injured in a car accident? It can be hard to take the proper legal action after a car accident, but waiting can cost you more. The law requires car accident victims to assert claims promptly. You could lose out by simply waiting. Call 800-709-4667 right now to see what your claim could be worth when handled by a skilled attorney. With a lawyer fighting and speaking up for you, you could be entitled to a big cash award. Call 800-709-4667. That's 800-709-4667. Now it's fast and easy to connect with the legal help you need after your car accident. Call 800-709-4667. The call is free, but you need to act now before time runs out on your claim. You need a lawyer to fight for you, protect you, and get you the compensation you need and deserve. Time's wasting. Call 800-709-4667. That's 800-709-4667. Call now.
And welcome back to the Liberty Cafe. I'm your host, Rod Eccles. We are sitting here with Rick Robinson, who resides out there in the wonderful flyover country, as our wonderful politicians call it, in Middle America. Now, one good thing about Middle America is that if you want to see a part of the country, or the country as it used to be, that Middle America, you know, the states of Kansas, Oklahoma, northern Michigan, Minnesota, the Dakotas, they're still pretty much, I guess, stuck back in the 50s, if you will, or the closest thing to it, which is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing, actually. Especially when you start comparing it to the East Coast and the left coast, otherwise known as the West Coast. I'd like to welcome you back, Rick, and let's talk a little bit about what you have going on in your neck of the woods. Let me throw out a question to you that is a lot of people often ask a lot of talk show hosts. You ever think about running for office?
No, honestly, as much as I enjoy hosting my own show and doing the other things that I do where I actually step in front of a microphone and draw attention to myself, I'm really not that much of, I'm sorry, there's no nice way to put this, but not that much of an attention whore. So politics is not going to be something that I would ever really, truly be interested in.
Oh, well, that is, that would be too bad. Looks like, did we lose you? Oh, I think maybe we kind of lost Rick there for a second. Well, we will wait for him to, we'll wait for us to reconnect with Rick Robinson, and we'll get some more information out of him and see which direction he'll be taking his life shortly in the near future. I know there's he's got some pretty exciting stuff to share with us, so we will definitely get into that once we reconnect. If we can actually do that, we will try that. And I would like to say we're glad glad that you are with us and tuning in again. This is a live broadcast, even though we are pre-recording it. And
Hello.
Hopefully we have Rick back.
I can hear you now.
Great. That's the way, live broadcasting works. You get all these quirks, especially when it's on the inaugural program. I know I was asking you about running for office and that you didn't feel that was your calling as of this point. We'll put it in those nice terms. Although a lot of people have probably disagreed with you on that and think that, you probably have some wonderful and great ideas. How do you think that you're going to be able to best get some of your, for lack of a better word, political ideas to come to fruition?
Well, basically, we're already doing it here. We've started, actually, I'm the founding partner of the Spark Radio Network. I am also the programming director for K98 Talk, which is a web-based radio station. We have, over the last several months, started assembling lots of like-minded folks. We've added a lot of new shows, including yours, that airs with us every Monday through Friday from 10 Central to noon. And so, one of the ways that we're getting words out is by getting as many people put together in a central place that can put their ideas in a central place so that people can find them. We've also started becoming more active in some of the political groupings, like the Southern Republican Leadership Conference. Two of the hosts that we just added, which are JD and Stacy from shows like Game On and Bloody Marys and Broadsheets, actually were at CPAC for another network before they joined mine. And they actually, Stacy will be at a convention coming up in a few weeks, and then we hope to have a group of our folks over at an upcoming convention in Atlanta as well. So, one of the ways that we're getting involved is actually just to get involved, to get out there, to start being able to get questions asked and answered, to put ideas on paper. Most of the folks that are with me at the stations, they write for blogs through folks like Rebooting Liberty and a few other places. So, that's one of the things that my main goal is to bring as many people together in a central place to get our ideas out so that we bring attention to those ideas, because up until now, internet broadcasting has basically been a bunch of different people on a bunch of different platforms all saying pretty much the same thing. So if we can get a central place where as many of them that want to can come together, then there's a better chance that all of our voices can be heard, which has been my goal all along, and it's actually finally starting to come together. So that's basically been how I've decided to get involved, through social media, of course, and now internet broadcasting. And at some point, I may or may not start doing more writing again. I really haven't had much time to do it lately. But other than that, I don't see myself being the guy that would step in front of a microphone and say, vote for me. I can't do it. It's just not who I am. Honestly, when I don't do this, I'm one of the quietest, most shy people you will ever meet. I don't know what changes when I get in front of a microphone when it's on the radio, but I don't even really do public speaking all that well. I don't know why this doesn't bother me as much, but it doesn't, and I'm not sure why.
Well, that's probably a discussion for that wonderful psychologist that I mentioned. Now, you mentioned a couple of radio stations that you're involved in now, and K98 I know is one of them, and my program, The Rod Eccles Show, is affiliated with your network over there. And by the way, folks, great lineup that they're gathering over there, and you should, and we'll find out how to actually contact Rick and get in touch with his station and things like that a little bit later. But what actually motivated you into going in this direction? Because like you said, the internet radio right now is pretty fractured. However, it's starting to come together. Where do you see K98 and your other digital ventures heading?
Well, one of the things that I'm hoping for is I think a lot of us are getting involved in internet radio at about the time when it may soon stop being called internet radio. Think back to cable TV in the late 70s, early 80s. Everybody called it cable TV. It was the new thing. There were providers everywhere. There was all these new channels. So it was, hey, do you have cable yet? Now today it's just TV. I think internet radio is headed in that same general direction, because now we're getting to the point where people can take it with them on their phones. Most providers have some sort of an app, whether it's the Spreaker platform, which is our home, or TuneIn, which is also one of our homes, or even my show, which is on iHeart and Stitcher, you can basically take your internet content with you pretty much anywhere any longer, and I think, or anymore. And I think because of that, we're on the verge of seeing internet radio soon to become what everyone had hoped satellite radio was going to be, which was a revolution for the radio industry. I say that with having some connections in the terrestrial world and having some folks that I know personally that work for a company, and suddenly their old name escapes me, but they have now renamed themselves to iHeartMedia. So that should tell you exactly how strong the internet presence is becoming on the radio. Oh, it was Clear Channel. When a company that used to be known as Clear Channel suddenly decides to do a complete rebrand and name themselves after a platform that they themselves started, that should tell you how prominent internet is becoming.
And a number of, well, for folks who don't know, Rush Limbaugh was distributed through Clear Channel for years, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, iHeartRadio has over the past 2 to 3 years has become very huge. Now, do you see other digital platforms like iHeart doing the same thing? I know there's some other new ones out there. They may not be new. Again, I am not one of those geeks that keeps track of all this techno stuff, and every time something new comes out, and I think it's new, it's actually been around for like 12 or 18 months. And so I'm behind the curve on a lot of this stuff. But are there other players that are coming along? Do you see your ventures getting connected with any of the other big players?
We're already connected with TuneIn, which is a pretty big equivalent to iHeart. The entire station actually runs through there. We are actually in talks now to try to see about getting the entire station placed on iHeart. Don't know how that's going to go, but right now my solo show, America Off the Rails, is on there, and you can find it there just by searching. As far as any other ventures, I really don't know if there's anything that would compare to those two, at least not that I've heard about before. I mean, I'm sure there are, but I don't really know of any off the top of my head. I mean, one of the biggest platforms that I know of for internet radio is actually the one that you host this particular show on, which is Live 365. Up until recently, I've heard nothing but good things about that particular platform, but it's just been one that I've never really been that interested in pursuing, simply because I'm not a professional, and it does take a lot of technical know-how to make that particular platform work, at least from what I understand. But it's been a home to places like WAR, which Wayne Dupree is pretty well-known guy in internet radio circles, actually won Blogger of the Year at this year's past CPAC convention. So, I mean, it can't be a bad place to land. It's just not really anything I've ever really considered pursuing, other than a couple of questions that I asked him at one point when I was first considering where I was going to go after Blog Talk Radio. Because I don't know about anybody else, but that's usually where a lot of folks that I talk to get started, is Blog Talk Radio, because it's easy. It's easy to run. It's easy to use. But they want a lot of money for their service because they do make it easy to use. So at some point you have to weigh economics above the point of wanting to be able to do more than one show, which is why we did eventually land on Spreaker. And honestly, shortly after we landed on Spreaker, they made the announcement that they were going to start partnering with iHeart, which is why we've never left, because that is a really good connection to have.
Yes, that is. Now, the beautiful transition there. You mentioned your own program that you host, America Off the Rails. Now, what do you like to focus on over there on that program?
Usually political in nature, a few news stories here and there. It runs Monday through Friday from 7 Eastern, basically 7 Eastern, runs for about an hour. I'm usually the opening act for most of the other folks that come on behind me, so I consider myself their crappy opening act, but hey, I like it. Because, I usually am followed by folks like the Conservative Curmudgeon, Jason DeWilkins. We also now have Red Nation Rising Radio. Their debut was last night on T98 Talk. We have Game On with JD and Stacy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean, at this point, our evenings are really getting to the point where they're pretty full, and it's with some really high-quality folks, so it's one of the reasons why I come on earlier, so at least if nothing else, not too many people are listening to my show, and they can tune in for the real ones later.
Now, do you have anything? I don't know if you can talk about all the good stuff that might be coming up, but what can you tell us that new that you guys have up your sleeves that you're coming out with?
Well, I mean, the newest venture that we just got involved in was partnering with Red Nation Radio. They actually started last night. We are in talks with another network that I believe your show is on as well, to do cross promotion, which is or your Rod Eccles show anyway, which is the Leading Edge Radio Network. We are probably going to start playing some of their content during the day because I don't have very many hosts during the day yet, and they're going to hopefully start playing some of our content as well, but we're still trying to iron all of that out. One of the biggest things that I'm into, which I noticed up until I really started trying to do it myself, not too many people were doing it because it was like all of the conservative station directors out there were just like, no, we want to keep everything in-house so that we can find ways to make money. I want to make, and they're basically, their whole practice is web-based and clicks and traffic. I want the advertising pie that typically up until now has belonged to strictly terrestrial radio. I want advertising revenue, which means the more places I can put my shows, and which is obviously your general mindset as well, the more likely I am to be able to get advertisers. And then at that point, once I get that part figured out, then I can figure out how to get all the clicks and the web traffic for money for dessert. So, to quote Pinky and the Brain, my plan is to take over the world, but it's not working yet.
You know, with that quote, you have just lost probably half the listenership. I'm amazed at how many people I quote not just television and movies, but I tend to often quote cartoons because they have some of the best lines ever created, like Pinky and the Brain. That was an amazing cartoon. Again, much like Bugs Bunny, it'll never be duplicated. So I often quote Bugs Bunny lines, Roadrunner lines and all kinds of things, and people look at me like I have two heads when I say it, but I think it's funny. So I fully understand the Pinky and the Brain reference. Now, I know one of the things, it is kind of difficult, and it's probably because this is in the early stages. Rick, you're a pioneer in the digital media right now because it is starting to congeal, and people are starting to figure out how to make this work and how to make it viable. And one of the things that you're finding difficult to bring to fruition is the advertising dollars. Now, do you really think that it is that the old model of generating an income to keep a station running is really going to work in the digital world? I mean, people can fast forward through ads now. That's one of the beauties of buying subscription TV services like Netflix and Hulu. Either you have very few ads or you can just fast forward through them. How is that going to work with our platform?
Well, I mean, ultimately it would depend on how they're tuning in. I mean, as an example, when you tune into the show through our website or through the TuneIn server, you don't really have the option to fast forward through the program because it's actually carrying it live. Now, through podcast, yes, they would have the option to fast forward through them, but we hope in most cases that at least occasionally they won't. And I don't plan on filling up 5 to 6 minutes of break with commercials, so it will be a lot more like Hulu Plus, where they have advertisers, but it's only a couple here and there. But the more content I can get with those advertisers, the more money the station will make overall.
Now, are you looking to also hook up with things like YouTube, having a YouTube channel, or Camtastic, I think, is the other one, or Vimeo? Oh, Vimeo is short spurts of video. Because I know one of the things that you can do with Spreaker is that you connected to YouTube, and it'll load up over on YouTube, although there isn't any video attached to it unless you actually are broadcasting video. And frankly, I don't know how that works, to tell you the truth. But again, I'm not one that wants to be in front of the camera. So I'll just stick behind the microphone on radio, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we actually already have everything tied to a YouTube channel because, as you mentioned, the Spreaker platform does automatically back up there. You can find it under my name on YouTube, which is Ricky Robinson. We have lots of shows that get posted there. It's not necessarily its own separate channel because for some reason Spreaker doesn't really want you to post it anywhere other than a YouTube channel that's tied to your name, or at least that used to be a restriction. I haven't played with it for a while to see if they've changed it, but I just decided to just keep letting things post there. And we do occasionally, when I have time, I do put edits and some other stuff up on a separate YouTube channel. So, I mean, we are on YouTube in a few different places, and it is something that I do plan on putting to use at one point. And a few of our hosts have mentioned interest in doing video broadcasting. So when we get to the point where the station is pretty well lined out, which we are getting there now, that may actually be my next venture. I myself, of course, will remain strictly off camera, but I don't have any issues with letting other folks that are more comfortable with using the video medium do so.
Now, do you think there is a trend going towards subscription services? I mean, again, like I said, you have Netflix, you have Hulu. HBO has now ventured away from just being strictly a cable TV offering with HBO Now, which, by the way, I have gotten so I could watch Game of Thrones. But you also are seeing, although it doesn't seem like satellite radio has really taken off. In fact, they may be in trouble and they may not be around in the next 5 years. But other types of revenue-generating types of subscription services, like Glenn Beck's Blaze TV radio system, I guess, is still strictly revenue is generated mostly by subscription service. Do you see that as something viable for a new candidate or a new network like yours?
It might be further down the road. We have really good numbers overall, but I don't think we would have the type of sustainability we would need to be able to do a subscription service and actually have it worthwhile. But it is something that at some point we may consider. It hasn't been something I've considered up until now because I know some folks that have tried to venture into subscription too soon and gone to the point where they are subscription only, and they've wound up eventually killing their own listenership. So that is not my ultimate goal. But at some point, my plan is, let's just be really honest. At this point, I'm going to be trying to branch off in as many different directions revenue-wise as I can. So I want the traditional advertising. I want, eventually, when we get things lined out properly, I want to be able to get the advertising through the clicks and the folks using my website to get to other folks' blogs that are on my station, all of that. And so at some point, subscription may become another method that we use, but I don't know if we would ever go to strictly subscription or not. And right now, our business model wouldn't support it because while we do have good traffic, I'm afraid we would lose over half of it even if we started charging people like $5 a month. I think we would lose too much traffic, and I don't think it would be worthwhile, at least not at this time. Glenn Beck built his listenership up using terrestrial radio before he started this particular venture, and he still uses terrestrial radio. His show is still broadcast in my hometown on KTOK, so I know he's still using terrestrial radio as well. So it's not like he's gone strictly subscription, and actually I do believe that he is now being offered on a few different cable networks, sadly not mine, so I am a subscriber to the Blaze. But it's just one of those things where if you do it right, subscription will work, but it usually only works in tandem with other things that can help build your numbers. So at some point you may consider it, but not at this time, though.
Okay, here comes the point of the show where I'm going to ask for you to put on your prestidigitatus cap and peer into the future. It is now November 2016. It's Wednesday, the day after the election. Who do you think that is? Who do you think is now the president-elect of the United States of America?
I can tell you for sure who I hope it's not, and that's either Clinton or Sanders. That being said, I honestly don't know at this point because my big guy up until a few minutes ago, and he hadn't even declared yet, was Scott Walker, except I recently read an article where he's in support of reinstating the Patriot Act in its entirety, so I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to support him much longer. So as far as who I hope It is. Up until about 10 minutes ago, my answer would have been Scott Walker. Governor Perry's made some pretty big waves with his recent announcement. We could do worse than that. So if nothing else, I hope it's at least maybe Governor Perry. Anybody but Clinton, Sanders, or Bush. I'm tired of political dynasties is another issue.
Okay. I don't blame you on that. Rick, finally, tell the listeners how they can interact and get in touch with you.
All right. Well, I do have a Facebook page. You can reach out to me there. It's www.facebook.com/Rowdy Ricky Robinson. You can also follow me on Twitter at @double_R_OKC. The show can be heard Monday through Friday on K98 Talk, its official home, as well as the Spark Radio Network. I also host another show called Finding Common Ground, which can be heard every Saturday morning. And my show, America Off the Rails, is available through iHeart and also AMFM247.com, which does include 7 small AMFM terrestrial markets. It does air there every Monday at 1 Eastern. So there are plenty of places to find us. And just in case there weren't enough, you can also download the show directly from Spreaker using their app, TuneIn, or also Stitcher. So, as I usually tell when everybody gets to this point, if you haven't found me yet, it's because you're not looking. And personally, I wouldn't blame you if you weren't. Just saying.
Well, Rick, it has been a pleasure, even with the couple of technical glitches we had. But thank you so much for spending the time with me this morning. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate your time and your insight. It is great to be working with you over on your networks, and I wish you all the success that there is.
Thank you very much for your time, sir. It was an honor, and I fully understand technical issues. We had a similar situation when you were on with Grouchy, so I do understand.
Yes. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend, Rick.
You take care, sir.
And folks, that brings to the end our very first Liberty Cafe with yours truly, me. And we'll be back here again next week at 10 a.m. on Live 365. And you'll probably be able to catch a download from many different places. But until then, folks, I just hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Thanks for listening.